So, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to share what we're doing. I added a piece to sort of set the tone. So I'm going to read a little bit of this just because I think it's so germane to where we're going. And it's good to center down by Reverend Howard Thurman. And for me, centering down is really connecting to the earth. So what is the end of our doings? What are we trying to do? Where do we put the emphasis and where are our values focused? For what end do we make sacrifices? And where is my treasure? And what do I love most in life? What do I hate most in life? And to what am I true? Over and over, the questions beat in on the waiting moment as we listen, floating up through the jangling echoes of our turbulence. There is a sound of another kind, a deeper note, which only the stillness of the heart makes clear. It moves directly to the core of our being. Our questions are answered, our spirits refreshed, and we've moved back to the traffic of our daily round with the peace of the eternal in our step. How good it is to center down. How good it is to connect to the earth. That, I think, is the benefit of doing this work. So what do we mean by ethics? I've been fascinated by this question for my entire life, and I have never found any really good answer. So ethics is the discipline of dealing with good and bad and moral duty and obligation. This is all from the dictionary. And ethics tends to suggest aspects of universal fairness. So we get universal for the first time. Morals often describes one particular values concerning what is right and wrong. So ethics is about right and wrong and universal understandings of right and wrong. How ambiguous can that possibly be? Because you have no idea what that means. And then we get into, which is for me sort of the thing that made it all go crazy, is that we have ethics for different things. So we have a situational ethics, a system of ethics by which acts are judged within their contexts instead of by categorical principles. I love this one. Interim ethics, an interpretation of the ethical teachings of Jesus as principles enunciated for governing the conduct of the disciples during the anticipated brief span of time before the coming of the second advent and the passing of the terrestrial world. And then, of course, bioethics, a discipline dealing with ethical implications of biological research and applications. And my questions are, why are there thousands of different kinds of ethics? That makes no sense to me. If we're all human beings on the same planet, there should be some thread that goes through all these, and I have yet to find one. Well, I can't say that. Now I have found one, but up till now, I hadn't found one. And the idea that ethics change from situation to situation begs the same question. By what context? By what standard? By what foundation? Is there a thread? If all living things, if all human things are living, then certainly there must be some connection that goes through all this. And religions try and do that, but then we've got lots of religions. And there are some threads certainly that go through all of them, or through many of them. But I have always been looking for something that holds all of this together in a whole. And the idea of death is one fulcrum point that totally varies or has no coherence in most of the ethical things that I have, theories and models that I have looked at. We say killing is wrong. You can't live without killing. You have to eat something. And we all know that. And then we get into second and third order of ethics where you can kill for your own self-protection. But when I look at nature, death is inherent in that. But you kill to live. You don't kill for pleasure. You don't kill for anger. You don't kill out of irritation. You don't kill to get rid of somebody that's in your way. You kill to eat. And for me, that starts the beginning of a true ethical approach to life. But before we go any farther, I would like you all to get a pencil and paper, please. David, for true, get a pencil and paper. I really want you to do this. Daniel, you too. We're gonna go through 15 values. I'm gonna ask that you actually write the value down and then put next to it how you rank its importance from 1 to 5. So 5 is it's really important. This is part of me. 1 is, well, it's nice to have, but it's not so big a deal for me. Okay. So it's
Yeah,
going to take,
I'm ready. I'm ready to do it. Yeah.
okay, it's going to take some time, and I will go slow so that you can write these down. And I'm asking you to write that down so that you have time to reflect afterwards as well. So here are the values. So the first one is strength. So rank that on a 1 to 5 scale. Loyalty on a 1 to 5. Honor, 1 to 5. Standards of belonging. I sometimes get questions about this. So this means that you believe that there are criteria that qualify people for being part of the in-group, whatever that is, that there are certain standards they have to meet in order to be considered part of the group. 1 to 5. Tradition, 1 to 5. Honesty, 1 to 5. Inventiveness, thrift, 1 to 5. Optimism, productiveness, diversity, empowerment, 1 to 5. Co-creation, interdependence, and concern for the future. Let me know when you're done with the list.
Okay, I'm done. I'm not, I'm done.
Okay, all right. Daniel, how about
Yeah,
you?
me too. Yeah,
Okay.
me too.
Okay. So notice where your fives are. So if your fives are if you have fives, I'm assuming you'll have fives throughout these. So if you have fives in the first five, which is strength through tradition, those are values that belong to what I call the protective value set. And loyalty is the key value there, and all the rest of them are pulled along when one is loyal. That set of values has to do with protection, with being safe. And it has an instant us and them inherent in it. The second set of five values is honesty through productiveness. And this is the effective value set. Each value set has about 15 values, so this is only just the tip of each one. And that has to do with trading and with working with people that you may have in the past had difficulties with or could in the future. And honesty is the key value there. Now, if you've ever worked in a company of any kind, you probably have already sensed or experienced the tension between loyalty and honesty. They tend to be seen as mutually exclusive. And that's always been a problem because the effective values are values for business, but we often bring in the protective values, and that just makes a mess of stuff. And you've probably experienced that where you know the truth of the situation, but if you tell it, you are creamed, okay, or even fired, considered disloyal and untrustworthy and all those other kinds of things, when all you're really trying to do is share the truth of the situation. So these two value sets are the oldest, with, of course, the protective value set being the oldest. I mean, that goes back probably thousands and hundreds of thousands of years. So it's really very hardwired. So when we get into fear, that's the one that often is pulled forward. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now in the chaos that our world is facing, where people who are insecure are really looking for somebody to be loyal to save them from their situation. And so these values are really primed for that. The honesty, of course, is a value that can be brought forward because you do want to know the truth of the situation. If you have fives in the last five, which are diversity through concern for the future, these are values that are actually pulled from the planet herself. These are things that Earth does in order to ensure that life continues to live. And it's my theory, proposal, that as we move into the chaotic times that we're moving in, it's particularly as we're having to deal with the changes that the planet as a whole is having to make, then the more we can work with those changes, the more likely we are to survive the process that we're in. So now you have a sense of which system you have the most fives in, which is the most meaningful for you. And you can see how values have evolved over time and are still evolving. And I hope that's good and interesting information for you. There's no right or wrong. That's not the issue here. The issue is whether those values that serve us in the time, they have very different intents and purposes like any other living system. And that's the key both to their effectiveness and to the corruption that happens when we mix values from one set to the other, because they don't have the same intents and purposes. So I'm going with the fact that if we want life, that those are the values we should probably choose. So understanding living systems from a systems perspective requires thinking in wholes, not in pieces and parts. And that's the seduction of value systems, is that we have all these values. There's 45 that I'm talking about that you all have a resonance with. There's none of those that you just looked at that you went, I don't care about. I'm willing to bet. They all have a meaning for you and have a purpose and a point to be in existence. So when we see them as pieces and parts, there's a natural inclination to say, I want this value and that value and that value, and that's how I'm going to be. What I'm hoping to show you in Jane Jacobs' work, and she's the one who started this understanding of values as systems, is that can make a huge mess of things. It can answer two questions, I think. Why do good people sometimes do bad things? And why do sometimes really good behaviors not get us the results that we had really hoped would happen? Because we are choosing values from a system that has a purpose that is not the purpose we truly wanted to have. So living systems are wholes, they're composed of parts. You can't take the part of one system and put it in another. That is just true. You cannot do that. And we have a tendency to want to, especially when they're invisible, they're intangible, and we have emotional connections to them. Why wouldn't we pull it forward? It feels right. It doesn't happen to be effective. Both parts and wholes do create. But in living systems, all the parts agree to keep life flourishing. That is the major difference. All parts in a living system that is whole and ethical agree to keep life flourishing. So Earth, which is life-centric, is filled with living systems. And those living systems all share the same purpose, which is the prime directive. The prime directive comes from the work of Jeannie Benyus and biomimicry. And it's all actions create the conditions that support life. So every living system on the planet is busy creating the conditions that support life, except for one, and that is us. So nature's ethics, for me, start with the prime directive. All actions create the conditions that support life, because we all agree to keep life flourishing. That is so basic. And it's not rocket science, and it's something we can all do every day with every decision in our life, if we keep that purpose in our mind. We devolve to our own little agendas, and we can rethink our agendas in terms of keeping life flourishing. What do we do every day? What do we do in our work, in our personal life, that keeps life flourishing? I think it's a fairly simple but very complex shift that we need to make. But it doesn't take a lot to conceptually understand it. It does take a lot to actually live it. So shared values, this is my research. This is where it came from. So when I look at science, I get ideas like autopoiesis, self-making, syntropy, the ability of life to talk to each other and to come to agreement about how to work together. The complexity, because as more and more life is able to do that, those solutions become way more complex. No waste. Diversity, evolution, and ecologies are all concepts, all values that come out of science. And when I think of our body is a biome. We are probably the most complex biome outside of the planet we live in that we know of. So there are about 30,000 individual things, different species that live in us that are busy making their own life, making themselves happy, effective in relationship with the other 30,000 that they have to deal with. And in the way they do that, that allows us to live. We are only alive because they're making those choices. So you see autopoiesis, syntropy, complexity, all of that is in us. We are an example, a living example of that. When you look to indigenous wisdom, you get right relationship, reciprocity, interdependence, zero waste, the integrity of the whole, future first. They're the only ones that talk about that. And ecologies. Back to our biome. If our critters are not in right relationship with themselves and each other, we have problems. We get sick. That's what happens. We are in reciprocity. They give us the ability to life, and we do that for them as well in terms of how we live our life, our lifestyle, and what we eat, the environment in which we live, which we're trashing. There's an interdependence between us and them, between us and it. It flows through the entire thing. We have to manage the integrity of the whole, of all of it, or none of it works. So we have to carry that bigger purpose, that it's about all life thriving, not just us. And I think, frankly, that that's the gift we give. And we'll get into that in a bit. Systems thinking. Dynamic stability is a new thing that systems thinking brought forward, and that has to do with range. When we create boundaries, we make walls that stop things. Nature doesn't do that. All those walls are permeable so that things can flow through. And it's that permeability that allows for the range. Because there's a point at which you don't want things flowing through. They're not good for you. So you need to stop it. And there's a point at which things can leave, but not everything. There's a point at which you need to stop it. So there's a range. Our temperature is a good example of that in a number of ways. We claim it's 98.6, but there's actually a range. It can be like 105, and it can be, like maybe 96, 95, but you can't go past that or you die. And you're not comfortable at the edges. But there's this range. If you had to keep your body at 98.6, you'd be putting on things and taking things off all day long. That's all you do, because our temperature fluctuates so much. And you need to know that at least some of us are changing our temperature. The new temperature is not 98.6, it's 97.6 as we adjust to the heat around us, which is proof that these folks know what they're doing. And they are working to maintain life as best they can. And that's a big help to us. So optimization is about working for the larger whole, making it all work, not just so that one small part of the system is effective. It's for the whole. You have to make sure that what you do improves everything, not just your own capacity. Complexity, interdependence, co-creation, experimentation, and ecologies. Poets. Certainly the Berries, Wendell Berry is a really good example. We get into right relationship, reciprocity, and agency. Agency is really interesting because agency is central to autopoiesis, the ability of a life form to make decisions for itself and to take actions for itself. And humans are intrinsic is the other piece. We are absolutely intrinsic. We came from the planet. We evolved out of lots of decisions that lots of other life forms have made that ended up with us. So we're here because we serve in some capacity. Everything that's on the planet does. Everything that's here helps create the conditions that support life. We are part of that we do not consciously understand, or maybe even unconsciously at this point, understand what our gifts are, how we give back to the life that's here. And that's where I think we really hit both physical and spiritual dimensions, because it's not just the physicalness, it's also our consciousness in this space, combined with the consciousness of everything else in this space, that I think makes the difference. So why ethics in a time of crisis? Why aren't we doing survival things? We are, in a way, because I think one of the big things that I have learned through all of this is that we need to have our hands in the dirt. And I mean that so literally, I can't tell you. Biologically, our biology needs the germs in the dirt for us. If you work with the dirt, people who do that, even ditch diggers, I had somebody tell me that he was a roofer and he worked with a lot of people doing construction. And he said those people who dug were always happy, because the biology, the microorganisms in the dirt change our point of view, our mindset. They make us happy. They truly do. They make us healthy in many ways. These folks inside need the folks outside in order to be who they are. So hands in the dirt is truly something we need. But we also, I think, this gives us a clarity and a vision for how to go forward. It doesn't tell us what to do. It tells us how to do what we want to do. And that's, I think, what's been missing. It gives us direction. And for me, it's given me an incredible amount of comfort to know that I'm truly part of the system. We talk about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results as a definition of insanity. And that's what we're doing. So we need to be different. And this difference is a difference that gives us life. We can trust life to want life. If we listen to life, that's what its direction will be, whatever that is, however that is, because that's what life wants. It wants to live. It loves life. It loves itself. And it wants that expression. As we contribute to that, that is our benefit as well. So I think it's very germane at this point in time. To live regeneratively, we need a new purpose and new values that truly are supportive of life, which means releasing old habits and old beliefs about how limited we are, about how horrible things are, about the punitive, the fearful nature of the planet, which only happens when we're in resistance to it. And curiosity and experimentation are the methods by which we can grab hold of what really is there for us if we but ask. So now I am open to questions. Hey. Hi, Lua. Glad you made it. So thoughts?
Catherine, this is just, I just am so impressed with your framing of things here. It just is, you know, it's strongly resonant to me.
Thank you. I mean, we've known pieces and parts of this for centuries, frankly. This really isn't new in that regard, but I don't think it's ever been put in a system. And I think the understanding that it is a whole is really important. Again, we like pieces and parts, and that doesn't really serve us in this.
Well, you know, you know, as far as all the resistance here in the United States in particular, towards, you know, the Republican Party, to me in particular, represents the extreme resistance to the need to change and the need to grow into a sustainable society. And but behind all that incredible rigidity and resistance is extreme fear.
Mhm.
And the thing is that the fear is real. You know, what's real is that our world is imploding. You know, our world is disintegrating before our eyes, and it's not just a question of things going from bad to worse. It's a question of actual existential threat. You know, you know, so and the reality that we are on some paths that you know where we're in the process of killing the planet. So
Yeah, no, that's all true. My hope is
yeah,
and rests in the fact that we are alive, we are part of life. Life does want to live, and
yeah,
it's really creative. I mean, if you ever doubt creation, just go look at the ocean. I mean, you'll see stuff that you just you couldn't even imagine. You couldn't even come up with in your mind. And there's a beauty in everything that we see, even if it's grotesque and outrageous and all of that. There's still a beauty in it. And I've come to believe that beauty is really an expression of integrity. So it's another benchmark for me that when we do things that we know are beautiful, when we say to somebody, oh, it's so beautiful, wait till you see it, you already have a sense of what your experience is going to be. You don't know what you're going to see, but you know what you're going to feel. Our bodies know so much, and we don't listen to them. We go here instead of here. And I truly believe, I absolutely trust that because we're inherent, because we're necessary in some capacity, that if we hit that spot and stay there, learn to discriminate our actions based on our feeling of yes by everybody here who says yes, that we'll be fine. We'll figure it out. We will find the path through. But when we are in resistance to it or think we know better, we have problems. And then we get those situations that are way uncomfortable. And it's, you know, the fire bites not because it's mad at us or it doesn't like us, but because that's what fire does. And when you understand that, you know how to manage that experience without getting bit. But you have to honor it. You have to trust it. You have to accept it for what it is and not pretend and try and make it something it isn't, which we are very busy doing with almost everything else. So I really have faith. I truly do. And I think it's exciting, actually, because if life is here, this is another learning that I've gotten from this material, is that life and love and consciousness for me are all the same. They're all the same expression of the same thing. Like water is vapor, ice, and liquid. Very different things, and still it's the same thing. I think consciousness, love, and life are the same thing. So hanging on to that is, I believe, a path through it. And it will be different. It's totally unique. We're all different. None of us are the same. So you can't say, oh, this is the way. But you can say, does this give you joy? Do you feel alive? That's all you need.
right.
That's all you need.
I'll just say one more thing. I just can't help. I've been reading Joseph Campbell lately,
Yeah.
and you know, I just can't help but there was one passage that he said something like, "Where you see energy, there is consciousness. You know,
Yes.
where energy is, consciousness is." And I'm not sure that he overtly said love, but that paragraph I read, but I'm almost sure he meant that.
Yeah. And love isn't necessarily romantic, you know.
Isn't necessarily what? I'm sorry.
Romantic.
Oh, yeah, right.
I'm curious, regardless of humans, in nature, there's a lot of death and destruction.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
So when you say life, the question comes up, whose life? And
You
in what time, and in what time frame are you talking about?
Right.
Short term, long term?
Yeah, I don't think you have, I don't think those conversations are relevant with nature, frankly, because life eats life in order to live. And in that is a death always. So part of understanding that is accepting that and being part of that. We will all die. You know, that's not going to happen, folks. So the question is, do you die in service to life or for some other silly reason? Because we can do both. You know, it has a purpose. There's nothing wrong with a purposeful death. And frankly, with 8 billion of us, a lot of us are going to die. Okay, I don't think there's any way around that. And that's also lessons that we've seen in nature, that when a species overshoots its capacity, part of it has to go. It doesn't fit any longer. It's not part of the circle. It overrides things. So it's about right relationship, reciprocity, interdependence. All those things come into play. So there's nothing wrong with death, but nature does not kill for the fun of it. Okay, nature doesn't kill because it wants a whole bunch of bodies. It doesn't do those kinds of things. It kills to eat, to live. If we did that, we'd be fine.
What about volcanoes, though, that kill a lot?
Sure. I mean, it's again, you're talking about time frame. I don't think we can hang on to those kinds of things. Those create a kind of fear. We are a cycle. I happen to believe in reincarnation. That's a whole other talk. We can do that if we want. So we lose this body, yes, and then you get to do another one in a different way and with a different understanding. It's just, why resist it? Why resist what is? It just is the way it is. And when you can accept that and really be with it, there's a lot of peace that comes with it. I mean, I went through liver cancer, okay? So and I was given the option. I had a choice to live or die. And I made the choice that I would live. And the minute I made that choice, I knew that I would live. I had no idea how that was going to happen. Zilch. And I simply followed what came to me as I progressed. I did those things that felt right. I didn't do those things that didn't feel right. I didn't do chemo. I didn't do radiation. And here I am. Okay. And I had liver cancer, which is a 15% chance. So there are lots of ways of doing things. Mine is not the only path, but it was a very effective path for me. And it was based simply on feeling what was right, what I could afford, frankly, played part of that. And what I couldn't afford, actually, when I wanted it, came. People gave me money. So, I mean, those kinds of concepts just don't work. They just hang us up when we worry about them. They just stop us from really being present and part of what's happening.
You know, all those crickets that are invading that town in Nevada, the crickets that are killed or die, the living crickets eat them. So it just is sort of like, yeah, all of you're right. All of life, anything that's living that's either killed by a predator or dies, lives a natural life, quote unquote. Whatever whatever is of your body is going to be reprocessed for other living things. Just as
We're the only species that doesn't do that, that withholds herself. Even in death, we put ourselves in crypts and all sorts of kinds of things and burn ourselves up instead of really going back to the earth. Yeah, we are great at withholding. We're so good at that.
great at what now, sir?
Withholding.
Withholding.
from life. So now we just need to turn around and give back. That's all. And be comfortable and excited about that and creative even. It's a whole different reframing to choose life instead of choosing death. Because death is just a fear of life. And I mean, yeah, it just, yeah. Daniel, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm thinking about an interesting possible difference between monotheism and polytheism that comes from different peoples. Very often I find people who doesn't believe in one or a God, that doesn't recognize anything that we could relate as nature or superior consciousness or something like that. The people who doesn't believe in individual beings, not because they need to evolve and get as much civilized as we are. They just have different ethics about how life is being a part or is not a part of anything. And for some of them, the interesting part is that they don't see life in anything. They see life flowing across the existences that we individually can recognize. So there's no death or life that can be interrupted or that can restart, because there's nothing to be restarted. Therefore, there's nothing that can be blocked or glued together or bridged, because there's no, in Buddhism, in Buddhist terms, we could translate it as there's no separation.
Right.
But we don't need to be Buddhist to see these that way. So it's interesting because some of the monotheist religions make us believe that the individual consciousness is attached to freedom of speech, freedom of thinking, freedom of consciousness, freedom of morals and ethics. And because of this attachment to freedom, perhaps we are missing the point, or we are missing the whole.
Yeah.
So I think the very idea of something universal as ethics is an idea very much attached to the idea of a monotheism or a monotheistic approach of life. And I couldn't say all of the indigenous persons that I have met, but I dare to say most of them they don't believe in freedom or nature. They don't even use the word nature, except to mock us. Except to say, well, go ahead with your nature thing. There's nothing there that we could call nature.
Yeah.
There's nothing outside that could be an object of anything that we could call there. So universal is not a possibility in this case. That would be my thought.
Thank you for that view. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't think about life much. You can't put your hands on life. There's no way you can. There's absolutely nothing there. And yet it's everywhere. We only see it as it's expressed in the thing, but it is certainly more than the things it's expressed in. Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt. Yeah, I come from an Eastern background too, so it's just, yeah, I don't see any conflict, frankly. Yeah, we get so caught in words. Stan?
Yes, I have another group coming on in 4 minutes.
Oops.
Not on this channel, but on another channel on my account.
Okay.
I can't have 2 meetings going on my account at the same time.
Okay.
So if you can wind up and put every information in the chat that you might need to share from each other.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. And there's more on my website, bridgetopartnership.com. And I have a community called the Coming Home Project. And you're welcome to join that. There's lots of stuff there, and you're really welcome to add stuff.
Catherine, is that on your website, the group you mentioned?
Yep, everything is. Yep,
Bridge to partnership.com?
yep.
Okay.
And then this is the community I put in the chat.
Oh,
If I
okay.
typed everything right, it should be okay. LEY, I think so. I might not have spelled regeneratively correctly. Should have been ELY probably.
Well, I'm definitely going to be checking your website out here, that's for sure.
Okay, well, thank you. Would love to see you and talk with you more. Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of discussion and lots of practice. I can tell you, I have learned so much by meditating on each of the values. It's just incredible what comes forward when you connect. Yeah. So.
Well, I deeply appreciate your presentation today. Really.
Thank you. Okay, bye. And thank you, Stan, so much.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.